all your friends.
That's it.
Where's everybody at? Where's Chuck? Clay was here. They're here.
Missing 2 aldermen.
They're probably having those behind closed door meetings or something.
Give me some.
I was looking for. I was looking for you. I was trying to find some sweetener.
Is Marshall not coming?
I think he's in
Marshall's in London.
London.
or something.
Right? London? Marshall's he's at the Parthenon.
I call this meeting to order. If you would, follow along with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Benton.
Here.
Denham. Here. Cooper.
Here.
Milton.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Howden. LeBlanc.
Here.
Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. On our agenda, we're going to have a discussion of past due sewer usage billings presented by Kendall. Hello, Kendall. I haven't seen you since last year.
I know, right? Chad, we should have a PowerPoint in there. There we go. So good evening, Mayor and the Board. I've been asked to present on the discussion of past due sewer usage billings tonight. So I want to touch base on the historical perspective of where we're at today. And so I named off some challenges we're having with serving sewer to customers not connected to Branson water. So a little bit of past history. We had Tri-States Water, which is now Missouri American, which at the time we had a very similar situation to what we're experiencing with Public Water District Number 3 area customers. Whereas we had multiple past due billings with Tri-State Water, as we didn't have a shutoff agreement with them. And once they transitioned to Missouri American Water Company, we was able to pursue a shutoff agreement and have been successful at keeping those delinquent billings down. It's been very vital to working through those delinquent sewer bills. And then, but with Tri-States, there was a significant dollar amount similar to what we had with District 3 at that time. Just a little background on that is they had, the finance department had chose to work through a collections agency to collect those bills. With that, that collection agency would only take on a certain amount of those billings because a lot of them was older and beyond a certain limit they felt that they could achieve capturing of those dollars back. So they took on $300,000 worth of bills, and they captured $5,000, and they took a percentage of that. There was a 22% commission for them to do that work. So as you know, with Public Water District 3, it was brought up during the discussion of the agreement that we had 4 main accounts that were largely delinquent. And then there's several others that are smaller amounts, and I'll get into those here in a little bit on some details when we talk about some solutions. But we now have a shutoff agreement with District 3 customers. And I wanted to use this opportunity to bring up the individual private wells that are out there. We have approximately 100 customers out in our sewer district area that are served sewer, public sewer, but have private individual wells. So we have no ability to shut those wells off, right? So there's a good possibility that we could start having delinquent customers within those private wells. So what do we do about that? So I'm going to present a solution to you guys later on here. And then we also have this historical perspective on monthly financials. So it's something that I have to be aware of in our monthly financials when I'm doing assessments of penalties, because we don't always collect those penalties. Again, when you look at the year-end financials, for example, in 2021, we had, I think, 1.8 million in penalties and interest on the 21 financials for the year end. The auditors deemed 1.6 million of it uncollectible. So we actually only collected 261,000 in penalties and interest for 2021. It doesn't mean that the billings are gone. It just means that they audited the financials. Those billing amounts are still there, and that's what you're seeing with the District 3 customers. So moving on to just code, I want to add in some code in there, what we referenced to. So we have in Chapter 90 of our utilities, we have Section 28, which talks about liabilities to pay for services. It also talks about when there are delinquencies, it allows the city to pursue civil action. To my knowledge, we have not done that to any customer. We've not legally went after anybody in a civil suit for unpaid sewer bills or water bills. We have Section 90-33, which just talks about our monthly water rates and sewer rates for Section 34. And then in 90-38 is our late charge and disconnection, which is where it coincides with our shutoff agreements for like Missouri American and now Public Water District 3. One code language I did not include in there, and I'm going to add, is we also have a Section 90-41, which is the city's administrator's authority to make adjustments, and the city administrator is authorized to make adjustments for circumstances and situations that may arise which are not clearly defined or addressed by this chapter, referring to Chapter 90. Such adjustments shall be in writing and reported to the board. So that section of code was added some years ago just to help with clarifying or anything that pops up that's not clearly addressed by code. I brought it up because I don't want it to be misconstrued that Kathy can go right off anything she wants to, with the board. We want to bring to you a solution, a possible solution before we did tonight to get your recommendations, or your approval, I should say. And then, so moving to solutions, our number one is our city code for our city water and sewer customers. We have our code that talks about we can shut off for delinquent customers. We now have shutoff agreement for Public Water District 3, and we have a shutoff agreement for Missouri American. We still need to address the past due sewer billings of District 3 customers. With that, we have the shutoff agreement for going forward, but we have all these billings that are passed before the agreement that we can't use the shutoff agreement to achieve those or to collect those billings. So we got to look at our options. Taking the experience that we had with the tri-state water system and those billings where there's a large amount and they use the collection service, I don't recommend we go that route. There's the other option of code is a civil suit. That obviously you can get into some cost issues with attorneys and working through that process. What I did is I reached out to our local Taney County Sewer District. We're similar to them. They serve sewer to many customers throughout the county. They all have different water sources. They have public water, whether it's being through a water district or through a municipality, and they also have private individual wells. So what they utilize is what the state recommends through the regulation is a lien process. They put liens on people's properties. And so that's what I'm proposing to you tonight is we incorporate some code language to incorporate placing liens on properties to be able to capture past due sewer billings. This is pretty standardized across the nation from what what I've gathered and researched. And when I talked to Brad Albritton with the Taney County Sewer District, he said they had great success at it. He actually sent us their SOP, their policies, all their documents that they use to go through the process. And I did reach out to our clerk's department, talked to Hillary as well, because she's dealt with some filings of liens, I believe, for the planning department and for certain situations, and conversed with her. So I think we can put together a pretty good package deal and code that would help us capture those past due billings based off of that. But the unanswered question is what do we do with those large amounts, right? You heard those 4 big accounts that had millions of dollars in penalties that's been compounded over, say, let's say a 10, 15-year period. So what do we do with that? When I worked with Ben, with Baker and Tilly, he had also suggested that we'd focus on the actual usage that the customer used, and then add 5% financing to that. So I've got some examples in chat. I think there should be another exhibit in there that shows some examples, if you would, please.
Within the same slideshow?
No, it should be another file. It should say examples of past due sewer billings in that same display folder. While he's looking for that, I've got a couple examples of, for example, the larger customer. We had one of the larger customers in there. The total bill was $1.5 million. And the total sewer fees, actual usage, was $3,055. So with the pursuing the actual usage and 5% financing, we would be asking to collect $3,200 on that sewer bill. So we'd be writing off or clearing off the books $1.5 million, what has been deemed for several years uncollectible. Now we have other examples of what I would call normal situation where there's a delinquent sewer billing. For example, the total bill is $182. The actual usage is $169. And so with the 5% financing, that'd be $178. So we're writing off $4.39. So that'd be a typical sewer billing. So when we had that transition period from pre-agreement with District 3, we have several of those that will be on that list. I was unable to get a complete calculation of all those numbers just yet, but we'll have to, several of those we'll have to address in that.
Kendall, if you don't mind.
Yes.
And I'll wait for you to finish. I have several questions here, but on this specifically, just for clarity for those that are listening, the one individual you just mentioned had $3,055 of actual usage, but what's owed due to penalties and interest is $1.5 million.
Yes.
Just so our community knows, is that one of the ones that we looked at that was a single-family residence?
That is correct, yes.
So let me make this real clear so everybody understands. It's not that the city is just willy-nilly waiving $1.5 million of money that's owed to the city, so why are you waiving $1.5 million? The explanation is this was a single-family residence that owed $3,055 in past sewer usage, and because of the time, 10, 15 years, when you add in the penalties and interest, and that compounds over time, that $3,000 grew to $1.5 million.
That is correct, yes.
So the city is not giving up or losing or waiving $1.5 million of taxpayer money, right? It was a combination of the city didn't have a procedure to be
Yes.
able to collect the money. which today we have an agreement to shut off the water to be able to collect it. But without having that agreement in place, the 1.5 million is, I don't want to say a pretend number, but when we expense that, I don't want to be accused of, well, why are we letting these people off the hook for these millions of dollars that they owe, right? So I
Yes.
think it's more understandable when we put in the perspective of one house, 15 years, compounding interest, compounding penalties.
Yep, certainly. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Kendall? I looked in the folder again. There's
That's
nothing
okay.
else out
That's my bad. No problem.
there. Okay, no worries. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. I give the two examples that I was going to bring before you. I've got some others, but they're very similar in nature. So let's look here. So again, we have the, that's was just addressing the Public Water District 3 past due billings. And really, it could go along with that policy, or that direction would go along with anything that's on the books that's been sitting out there for a long period of time. Again, because we didn't have a policy in place, it wasn't addressed beforehand, that it's time to get these work through the system. The private individual wells is, I bring it up because it's a concern of mine. I don't want it to get to where we're at today with District 3 customers, or where we was at in latter years with Tri-State water system. But to give you some context behind that is when those customers come online, they were required to install a water meter on their well service. So they installed a water meter. That water meter now is over 10 years old, which typically they start failing after around 10 years, especially the meters that those customers put in. They were obviously trying to do the cheapest way possible. Only thing we required is that it be a meter that read accurate and had a remote read, so our staff didn't have to go crawling under crawl spaces or opening up well houses, putting our people in bad positions or liable positions. We wanted to keep them out of bad situations as much as possible. Well, a lot of those remote reads failed, and the meters are starting to fail. We have no teeth to really require people to replace their water meter on their private wells, or even to pay their billings. We have no way to shut them off. So again, that's where I think I believe the lien process would be the most effective way, because again, that's shown by example across the nation. That tends to be the best way to capture those dollars whenever you don't have the authority to shut off their water system.
Ken, I have a question, and I don't know if the money you're talking about is significant enough, but the well would use electricity. So is there any opportunity to go to the electric companies and work out something similar to what you did with the water companies, to say anybody that's on a well that's being serviced by Liberty or White River that doesn't pay their sewer bill, there'd be some way to potentially shut off the electric? Or I don't know if the money's worth exploring that or not. But.
So you run into some challenges, and even on shutting off water, you run into challenges. But I know when I was doing some digging, researching, I should say, on the electrical side that popped up, is they're even regulated federally, if I remember correctly, that they can't shut off electricity in the wintertime when temperatures are below 32 degrees for health and safety reasons. So, I mean, it's a possibility, but again, I think there's a lot of variables and a lot of issues that could arise with going the electrical route, because you're not only affecting their sewer usage, you're affecting other things like their refrigerators and food and other things that could be health and safety related items. So I don't recommend that. Chad was able to find the document, the little examples here. Again, this is the two billings that I mentioned a while ago. So back on the private individual wells, my thought is to send out a certified letter to those customers and requesting that they replace their water meter with an approved meter that meets the city standards, one that would be that would work with our auto read system. So, so we could drive by, not touch, not set foot on the property, but capture those readings electronically, and to be able to get precise readings on how much water they are using. Otherwise, we put a caveat in there that they would have to pay a sewer usage of 5,000 gallons a month as a flat fee, which typical residential home would be less than that. It would be around probably the 3,500 to 4,500 range. To put a little bit of a sting to it, that they have a little bit higher sewer bill, to hopefully entice them to put in a water meter itself. And then if they don't pay their sewer bill, then again, we'll we'll pursue the lien process if you guys recommend that or approve that direction. So, let's see what else. So again, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'd like to, again, bring some code back before you guys. You know, one, recommending the lien process to be placed into code. The other thing I didn't mention was the authority to, Kathy and Ben and I talked about the authority to administratively be able to write off up to $10,000 through approval of the utilities director and the finance director and in conjunction with the city administrator. And that would have to be reported to the board. For situations that come up that, I'll give you an example. I had one here recently. I had a large commercial entity in town had reached out to me. Their headquarters are outside of Missouri. They're out in another state. They mailed a check during the Christmas season. The check got postponed in the mail through all the busy deliveries. So now they have penalties on their billing and are asking to waive that. So they give us the ability to do things like that up to a certain amount.
What was the amount again?
$10,000 is what we was
He's
recommending.
suggesting giving the city administrator the authority to waive up to $10,000, and anything that is waived would be reported to this board.
That's correct.
But not approved.
Well, it would be an approval at that level. Anything over that would be the board's approval.
Anything up to 10,000?
Yes, that's what I'm recommending.
Without approval?
Yes, correct.
Without board.
Without board approval.
Mayor?
Yes.
If I may, right now, there is no cap. So the city administrator has a wide range of authority to do write-offs, and I thought public policy would be better served if the Board of Aldermen and the mayor have oversight on exactly what liberties are being granted from the administrator's office. And we thought this was kind of a good workable solution in that it's not just the administrator that decides, it's in coordination with the finance director and the utilities director. As a team, we decide, and then up to that 10,000 limit, and then whatever it is, we do decide if there are those circumstances, we report those out so that the public's very aware of what's happening. But it's not just one person that's granting that. I thought that was kind of too much concentrated power.
How does the board feel about that? The question, they're looking for an opinion on authorizing the city administrator to waive up to $10,000 in late fees. Any amounts that are waived would be reported to this board. Any amounts over 10,000 would require Board of Aldermen approval. What say ye?
Is that, now she just said by committee, so it's not just one person that can approve that up to 10,000?
That is correct. And I kind of modeled that off of our change order process for public or for contracts for large projects. We have, again, it has to be 2 directors and the city administrator.
Oh. Yeah. That's fair enough. I didn't hear that part. I thought it was just, I don't think anybody, any one person anywhere.
No, it'd take all 3 of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. The other direction we're looking for from you, and obviously we have to bring back.
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Before we move on,
Yeah.
Any other board members' input, suggestions, comments? Lisa, did you have something?
I sure do. I'd like to comment.
Sure.
I think we should look at code. I think we're willy-nilly code these days. And I think that we need to look at those write-offs and how they are in conjunction with every other authority throughout the code book. There's different levels. We can talk about surplus property. We can talk about a lot of different areas. We can talk about purchasing and the levels of authority. It seems like we should come up with a standardized level of authority that we deem whomever at every level should have the capability instead of just look at one topic. Our code is somewhat archaic in areas, probably too low. We changed our purchasing code to go up to approval at $50,000 for the city administrator. We have surplus property at some ridiculously low amount. It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, to me, there's certain levels when you write off accounts, it's pretty heavy-duty authority. And so I just think that the level of authority and what you're looking at in the dollar amount should not just be about a topic, but should be about the authority of the position that is taking action. And I also think that you should look at the neutrality of the positions and the authority, because your city administrator's authority is above your directors. So she has your authority over your directors anyway.
Good point. Kathy?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. The only reason we're bringing this particular wheelhouse of utilities to you today is we've got an urgent need in front of us, which is what are we doing with the past due accounts we've got now that are continuing to compound interest and penalties? We've had some users who've reached out to us and asked, like, hey, can you give me a final total? Because I'm not going to pay this $1 million, but I am willing to pay the $3,000. I'm not saying it's that account holder, by the way. I'm just using it as an example. But I don't want to pay anything until I know exactly what the settlement amount is. So we just thought, as long as we're having this conversation, let's get clarity and direction from you all on that policy, as well as far as the write-off policy for future struggles that we've got. And then where do we go forward on, should we continue this disingenuous methodology of high penalties, high interest that we know we're never going to get? I mean, it's not realistic. And that's why these auditors are saying this is uncollectible. There's just no way you'll get it. So those are the three things we're looking for direction from you all on. If you're amenable to that direction, we can bring back some proposals. And if we're able to incorporate some of the things the clerk mentioned at the same time, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay, so let's address those one at a time. So then what I'm hearing is, Kendall, you're looking for direction from this board to authorize the city administrator and the director to write off amounts up to $10,000. And so to get that direction today from us, and then follow up with Lisa's suggestion, which is great, that we should have we should be standardized across all of these fields.
I guess my question would be, it would take the city administrator and 2 directors, so the 3 of you have a vote?
Yeah.
Or,
You think that the
Well,
two directors work for the
well,
city administrator?
well, no, I'm just, if 2 directors say, no, we shouldn't do that, can the city administrator position overrule that?
Sure.
Sure,
If
she
you don't
has all
agree, you're
authority.
fired.
Well,
If you don't agree,
No, I'm
you're
talking
fired.
about the right.
good Lord. And maybe it's not the city administrator. Maybe, I mean, again, we can hash out some of these.
Well, I mean, this
details.
is not directed towards you, but
No,
down
no,
the
I
road, we never know who's in that position, and that gives the tendency to let abuse of that, I got a buddy that down there, hey, can you let
Right
this
now?
$8,000 go? I
Yeah.
got a little behind, and that's how things end up
But
muddy.
that's right now how it is, just so you know. Right now, the city administrator has all of that authority to do the write-offs on their own.
Yes.
Well,
So
that
that's
needs
what
to be changed, but I'm not sure this is, I don't know.
I see what you're saying, Alderman Cooper, and would you be more comfortable if it was 3 directors?
Yeah.
Going through an outside person? And then,
Well, I mean, that wasn't directed towards that position.
I
I mean,
get what you're
same
saying.
theory could happen with 3
yeah,
directors.
okay.
I got this buddy, hey, come on, y'all don't mind. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but I'm just trying to nip it in the bud before 10 years down the road, oh my gosh, they, you know.
Okay. Your concern is, future city administrators overriding
I don't know. I mean,
some shape or form.
I hate to bring that up without having a solution, but maybe y'all have one. Maybe I don't, you know.
I guess my goal in this is to be able to address the smaller concerns.
Yeah.
Like the example I mentioned to you about the, a check getting lost in the mail or postponed in the mail, and now there's penalties involved with that. What's the line you draw, right? So it's trying to put some sort of line in the sand.
Maybe it's not the process as much the money figure. You know, maybe it's the 10,000 that bothers me more than if that number was lower,
Okay.
Well,
the risk is not as high.
Well, I think there's another, I don't know that it's the dollar amount necessarily, it's the reason too. Check lost in the mail, I mean, versus, so dollar amount, $10,000, well, I just didn't get it paid because my Christmas expenses were too big.
Yeah.
Versus
Yeah.
the check was lost in the mail, so what does the $10,000 level have to do with a reason that is not something the city should take on? I mean, and back to the authority to write off, I don't think you can give your directors, or you would want to give your directors authority to write things off. I think that that level is either at your city administrator or at the board level. That's where your levels exist in your hierarchy of decision-making.
Well,
We're
then-
just trying to make it not such a concentrated
Sure.
place of power for a financial decision. So, I mean, we could continue, you could, if you wanted to, require that all of those decisions are brought before the board for approval. I mean, that's the ultimate transparent way to do it, but administratively, that would become very challenging, as you can imagine. I would think, do you think, Kendall, maybe it wouldn't be with our new shut-off agreements, maybe it wouldn't be too burdensome, but I can't imagine you all would want to have to sit up here and take votes on individual sewer accounts. And then isn't there a confidentiality concern as well, I would think?
I would think there would be
Yeah,
some level of
private
that.
information
Yeah.
is
I don't-
protected.
I don't think the idea is terrible. I just, maybe that's not 10,000 and it's 1,500 or something. You know what I mean? More, if that number was lower, I would feel more confident.
Can you give us an idea of that specific situation with the check lost in the mail?
I don't have the dollar amount.
You don't know? I mean,
I can get
I
back to you.
think to Clay's point, I think, if it was $500, would that cover most situations where these, little things are occurring, or 1,000? I mean, 10,000 does seem high to be able to just waive a fee.
I have to do some further research and converse with finance to find out that information, what would be a typical amount.
Yeah, what's a good average, yeah, maybe?
Yeah, and we can do that.
Yeah. And again, you're right, I don't think we want to have us vote on every $132, but maybe if that number was $1,000 or whatever
Okay.
this seems to be the kind of average of what people are,
Yeah.
That's good direction, though.
Yeah.
That helps us, so we can.
That's fair.
We'll put something together for you to consider.
Okay, so that was one.
Yeah.
The other issue was, what do we do with the current past amounts? I know Ben is not joining us, but do you know the answer, Kendall? These amounts that, Chad, would you put up that other chart that you had just a minute ago? These other amounts that we're looking at, okay, that write-off amount, $1,512,000 on the far right. Is that currently on our books as a accounts receivable, I guess?
Yeah. Right, Kendall? I mean,
Yeah.
that's how it shows.
Yes.
Okay, so that's misleading. I mean, that's not right, because we know that's in our finances, but it's not real world.
That is correct. Yeah.
So so you're looking for direction of what do we do with that particular, are you looking for this board to decide how to handle that write-off, to approve that write-off, to clear that off the books? What's your,
Yeah, our recommendation is to pursue capturing actual usage plus 5% financing for each account.
and then wipe off the $1.5 million?
Yes.
How does the board feel about that?
Sounds like a no-brainer.
I think it makes sense. My only question is, where did the 5% come from and what?
That's what Ben recommended, wasn't it?
So in code, we have a 5% penalties
Okay,
written in code currently.
okay.
And that's pretty standard if you look across other entities and utilities, 5% is
And
pretty
you
standard.
don't, on this write-off amount, I mean, that's not something you budget or expect to ever recoup in terms of what you need to do with your department going forward, right?
So during our budget process, we do have a line amount in there where we budget a certain amount of penalties that we capture for the year.
And but that's based on going
Realistic
forward
numbers.
amounts, right?
Yes.
Not stuff like this that's been out there for 15 years.
Typically, it's, if I remember correctly, it's 350,000. And again, in 2021, it was 261,000 is what we captured, so.
I mean, it's a staggering number to see on paper, but when you look at the actual usage amount, it's also a silly number that it even ever got that high. So I don't see what value it adds to keep it out there and just this perpetual issue that's never going to be resolved.
I think Larry put it in good words as far as just there wasn't policy and procedures in place with the city at the time to address it, and so things just kept compounding and got to where we're at today. So I think it's a fair option.
So Cody, I'm hearing you say that you'd support just writing that off. I know Alderman Rodriguez says that's a no-brainer. Any other board input so we can give them direction?
I mean, I think that it, I mean, yeah, I mean, the 1.5, it's a real number because I'm looking at it, but it's just not feasible. I mean, whoever thought that was going to be collected, so I would be in agreement with that process right there.
Ralph,
Yeah, I'm in agreement.
would you pull your mic closer so everybody can hear you?
Everybody? Yeah, I would be in agreement of just writing it off. It's
Okay.
uncollectible. Yeah.
I agree.
So is that clear?
Thank you, very.
Yes, thank
And
you.
the third point you wanted was?
Your Honor, can I ask how that will happen, the write-off? Would that come back to this board for approval
I'm assuming
officially?
it'd have to be something in writing.
And
And I don't know if it would be a resolution.
No, you want it binding, I would assume you would
Yes.
want an ordinance on it.
Okay.
But I would just, the only thing is for posterity and future, you might put some background to it, because it will reflect back to this
Yes.
board that you just wrote off $1.5 million, even though we can all sit here and see it currently. It might be something you want to kind of have an explanation to, just because later.
Would you help us do that?
Yeah. And we'll make sure to have that in the
Okay.
staff report before we bring back the ordinance language.
That'd be great, and then we'll formally vote on it.
Well, the way you said that was really ugly. Just want you to know you just wrote off $1 million. Maybe we could put out something to clarify what that really is.
Well, that's why I said in your ordinance and your whereas clauses and things like that, you
Yeah.
can put some explanation is, because if you go back, without explanation, historically, that's what you should do in your ordinances, is to give some clarity, so you have some discussion for the future. Why did we do these? It all sounds great now, but 5 years later, they'll wonder
Like
what the
when-
heck you guys did.
Linda will show up and find that and go like, where'd this money go?
Linda,
Linda?
my Cherry?
You're Linda.
Cherry?
You're
My Linda.
Linda Cherry.
Oh,
Okay,
Linda,
so. Cherry's not paying attention. Okay, so we'll move down that road, and the third decision you wanted made was what to do with, and it'll be primarily private wells, but moving forward, the options of collecting unpaid sewer bills. We have several options. Your recommendation was to follow the county process and others where they use the liens to collect. Personally, I think that makes a lot of sense because we'll spend more money in legal fees than we will collecting.
That is correct.
And the liens will be recorded, so some a day, those liens will be paid off. They just won't be paid off today. But we won't go through the expense and effort. Any input on that, board?
Well, I mean, I agree with that, but I also think we should maybe look at addressing how these bills got to where they were, like the 1.5 million. Because if you put a lien out there, then I think those balances are going to do the same thing over time. So would it be possible to look at the penalties and interest provisions in the code and maybe make that something more realistic?
So I
Buddy, I
think
think
I
that-
hear your question. I'm sorry,
That's when
Mayor.
he was addressing the just make it a 5%.
So that's going to be just across the board, it's going to be 5% penalty.
Well, so I think, Alderman Fitton, what you were asking is, you put a lien on a particular piece of property for a dollar amount, right? And they continue not to pay their sewer bill, and here they have this lien sitting here. So what the county does is, the sewer district does, is they have to update their liens. They do a new lien, updating to a new dollar amount.
Yeah.
And at some point in time, if the property sells or whatever takes
Yeah.
place, then they capture that at that time.
I understand all that. My question is, like, if you look at the account that was $3,055 and how it grew to 1.5 million, are you proposing as part of these changes that it's just going to be a fixed 5% penalty going forward? Because if you keep updating the lien, whether you update it or don't update it, on the books, we're going to show numbers if these people aren't paying that can grow to those exorbitant numbers again. So what are we going to do to address that?
You're saying get rid of the formula that got us to that 1.5.
Well, at least look at it
Yeah.
because it's,
I think twofold. One, we have the shut-off agreements that prevent us from capturing those large amounts. Now we're talking about a smaller set of individuals, or customers, I should say, that you place a lien on the property. I can see where you're saying, yeah, there's compounding interest.
yeah, I mean, think about 10 years from now, they go to sell that property, you've updated the lien, and we have a $1.5 million lien on a $3,000 bill,
Yeah.
is my point. So
Kendall,
what are
can
we
I-
doing
can I
to
interrupt
address
just
that?
real
Yes.
quick? Yeah, that's exactly what we're looking for guidance from you all on. That was one of the questions that we're posing to you, is going forward, what's the formula that we should use that's a realistic, transparent formula that's fair to the ratepayers? So should that be the 5% per annum? If you're all okay with that number on late fees that we will experience in the future, that's the formula we use, and we get rid of this old compounding, punitive penalties and ridiculous numbers that will
No,
never.
when something's in a lien, a mechanical lien or whatever, is there interest accruing during that time, or no? It's just, let's say there's a lien put against something today for $1,000, 15 years down the road, is that 1,000 now 1,500?
Okay, I just used my calculator.
Who can answer that?
Cody, I'm sorry?
I was just knowing if somebody could answer that question.
I was going to try to.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you was addressing my, okay, go ahead.
In your example, if it was a $5,000 lien and it grew to the 1.5 million under the previous, under the current recommendation, if it was 5% annually over a 10-year period of time, that 5,000 would grow to 8,100. So over 10 years, it would go from 5,000 to 8,100, not 5,000 to 1.5 million.
Sure, and I just thought the 5% pertained to the current past due amounts. I didn't know we were changing that for everything going
I
forward.
thought, and I'm sorry, Kendall, I thought you said we would implement that today moving forward, not addressing anything in the past.
So we talked about as an ordinance, as Lisa recommended, that we bring before you an ordinance of how we address all the past due sewer billings. And we're bringing to you a number of actual usage plus 5%.
So that's just the past due, not
That's
the
just
going
past due,
forward
yes.
numbers. That was my question, is what are we going to do? And I know it's only 100 people roughly, but what are we going to do with those? I know the shut-off agreements address the vast majority of people, but with those 100, if we don't change the penalties and interest provisions in the code, we're going to find ourselves in the same situation.
Correct, yeah.
Was my point.
Yep, and I was side talking, pardon my, if I didn't hear this correctly, but we needed both, right? Are you okay with us just back charging the 5% on the already delinquent accounts? And going forward, should we use that same formula going forward when we encounter delinquent accounts that we can't address through the shut-off agreements? And we know there'll be technicalities that we'll have to work with the clerk's office to come up with the right language and ordinance changes, et cetera. But just so we're all clear, because I wasn't quite sure how Kendall answered that. Thank you.
Lisa?
Sure. I've handled these for, 10 years or so, that my offices do all those liens, and I have written procedures, city clerk procedures on how they're figured. And we have a procedure on those done for demolition. If you'll remember, we had a demolition for $10,000 and it grew for a lot of money, very similar to this. And then it went up on the courthouse steps. Nobody wanted to pay it. So it does Alderman Fenton, you're very right. It will grow and compound if it's written. If you're going to do it as a weed and as we do demolition and everything else, we carry those on the books. You're correct until they sold. They're compounded and their interest. And we also encounter recording fees and the fees to turn in and basically unrecord them. We charge all that back. We have a spreadsheet on all that, and we keep track of it. So if we get a call from a title company or a real estate agent that wants to sell that piece of property, that's when you pick them up. Until those are done, they're not picked up. So they can sit there a long time, especially if they're sitting on the courthouse steps and waiting for collection and taxes. And those are just sit there with it. But it does grow. Will it grow at the same rate? I don't know, but I'm just saying that that's how it's currently what we experience here at the city and how we've handled it in the past and what we have on our books. And you might want to ask, what do we have on our books right now? I can't tell you because I wasn't involved in this discussion, so I'm just fresh new at what I'm hearing, but I have all that information. And that will be, this would add to that.
So what I'm hearing, I think, is the current process, the current rules we have is these excessive penalties and compounding to take 5,000 to 1.5 million. The proposal is the 5% compounded, using a lien to recapture the funds. And personally, if we have a $5,000 delinquent sewer bill over 10 years, compounding at 5%, if that grew to $8,000, to me, that falls under the reasonableness versus the 1.5 million. And I would have no heartburn collecting $3,000 of interest on a $5,000 bill over 10 years for a delinquent.
Yeah, and
I think that's been pretty fair.
I think it is too. Like I said, I missed the part. I thought the 5% only pertained to these amounts that are already out there, and how do we try to collect those? So as long as we're doing that on this lien process, I think that makes sense.
Yes.
That was one of Kathy's questions, is not only moving forward, she was asking for our guidance on all the past due amounts. Go back and remove the penalties and interest that have compounded. Go back to the original amount of usage, apply the same 5% annually, and then collect that amount. Is that correct?
That sounds fair. So we're having this discussion, and it's really more of a focus on the 100 properties with the wells, but we need to go back and clean up. However, you have a way to take care of everyone else's with the water shut off. So you're just concerned about the private wells, and how do we move forward with the private wells?
And again, with what's on the books, how do we address all the past due that's on the books right now to get it cleaned up?
Is everything clear?
Yeah, thank you. And again, this is just a direction-setting conversation. It's a study session. We don't have any draft ordinances or anything like that. Obviously, we'll involve the clerk's office to go through all that and make sure we've got our I's dotted and T's crossed. But I think I feel pretty clear about where you want us to go. And again, we very much appreciate your guidance. So thank you.
I have a question for Kendall. Like, specific to the meters that you were talking about, what do those cost?
As far as our standard meter,
Well, because that person's going to be responsible for
with the radio read type meter.
Yeah.
They, at one time, a 3/4 inch meter was around $175. They've grown a little bit. I think they're upwards around $200 now.
Oh, okay, so we're not talking about thousands of dollars,
No.
just a few hundred.
For a smaller meter, no. For
Oh,
a
okay.
typical house size meter is, again, around the $200 mark.
Okay.
And if you would, expand on your other idea, if the homeowner didn't want to pay the $200 for a new meter,
Yes.
you're suggesting maybe offer them a flat rate?
Yeah,
I
a flat
would-
rate.
Looking at our fee structure, if the average resident uses, say, 3,500 to 4,000 gallons, and we have a flat rate based on 5,000, those aren't many dollars. I mean,
Not with ours.
$5. I
Yeah,
mean,
where our rates
it's
are
a
at.
real nominal amount. So the homeowner would have a choice, go pay for the new meter, or just agree to a fixed amount.
Yeah, keep in mind that these customers are located outside the city limits. So we charge them 2.5 times the normal sewer rate. So their dollar amounts is quite a bit higher than inside city limits.
So then, just using real round, rough numbers, the homeowner would have a choice of paying, say, an extra $15 a month, or go and pay $200 for a meter,
Correct, yeah.
give or take. You get that? I think giving the homeowners a choice is much more preferable than saying, you will spend this money on a new meter.
The Taney County Sewer District, they use a flat rate for all the residential customers.
Oh, they do?
Because they know the challenges as it is with trying to get them to install a water meter and maintain it properly and do the readings. So they've chosen just to do a flat rate for all residential customers and then do a metered rate for all commercial.
Have you thought about that also? Just
For our city of Branson,
Yeah.
it makes it challenging on budgeting, to be honest with you. You're trying to predict what,
If you go with a flat rate like the county does?
yeah. It makes it challenging on budgeting because the amount of sewer usage can vary for each customer. I visited with Brad a little bit about that. I can reach out to him and discuss that more and to find out if it'd be feasible for us. But just in the initial conversation, I wasn't real inclined to move that direction.
Okay.
One more question.
Yes.
Have you ever entertained the idea of like a subscription, like bill paying service for because I know my wife pays hours in advance a whole year. We get a bill every single month, and I just think about that. I'm like
Like a pre-buy
postage
option?
paper. Yeah, well, she prepays it, and we get postage paper every single month for the bill, and it's just minus that month's service, and then the next month, same thing. And I'm like, well, if people want to prepay it or just automatically pay it, like a subscription type deal, like wouldn't that just kind of eliminate a lot of cost in sending out the bills? It would also limit, I mean, like, who's got a subscription service? Everybody does. Netflix, your internet, everything. One of those, you can't get Netflix one night, you know what you're doing? You're putting it on another card, right? So it's kind of like the same concept. It just eliminates ever letting someone get so far delinquent, because at least you have a consistent payment. If something happens where it's an NSF or they just don't have enough on that credit card, it's a simple call or an email that automatically gets sent out, says, hey, your payment was not accepted, do another payment, or come into the office or something like that. I just think it would kind of cut down a lot of costs when it comes to postage, paper, ink, all those things. And I mean, just an idea. I mean, and it would just kind of make things simpler. I mean, it's 2023. Like, people are doing that.
That's a
believe-
terrible idea, Ralph.
Yeah. I believe they have an option to prepay of some sort. It's not advertised a bunch, but I think they can.
Well, I can tell you what it is. You just prepay, like, my wife figures out, like, what the number is each month. She times 12, sends in a check. That's it. There's no discount. There's no anything like that. But we still, what I'm saying is, every month, we get an envelope with the bill.
Yeah.
I know that cost us money. Why do I,
Yeah.
like, do you follow what I'm saying?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So,
We can
I don't know,
explore that.
just a thought, if there was something that could make that system of payment easier for our residents inside and outside of the city. It's an option, opt-in, but I think people will do it. I mean, people are used to doing those kinds of things.
You just put some little girl that licks and sticks stamps out of a job, Ralph.
Kendall might
Hey,
wrong that we
there's a
have auto pay.
McDonald's where there's not people that work in there. It's completely automated that just
No,
opened up
I
last
think
week.
what you're saying makes sense.
We have several job openings. We'll relocate that person to another position.
Yeah, send them to the Clay Cooper Theater.
I believe we do have auto pay, just to be
We do,
clear. I'll double-
yeah.
So they can, I mean, you can electronically get your bill and you can auto pay on the website. So, like, for me, and I'm not here, but I put it on
how
one
can we make
card,
that
it hits
attractive
the
for
card, I
people?
auto pay, and then I pay the card off. I don't know.
Like,
That
how can we
way-
make that attractive for people? I mean, just to drive people to that, to start eliminating those delinquencies and eliminating, I mean, I know this was more a procedural thing that these bills got out of hand, but, you know, moving forward, I mean, if we can make things simple like that and really let people know there's these options available to you, I think it would just simplify so much on their end as a resident and also on our end as a municipality, so.
Yeah, we'll explore some options.
And that's a great idea, Ralph, and maybe even expand on that. I don't want to get in the weeds. But maybe we could offer a 5% discount if you paid annually, because I don't know what our cost savings would be, but monthly invoices, envelopes, postage, labor, I mean, that's a real cost to the city.
We're getting that.
Pass that on to the homeowner.
That is, I mean, because you're right, the younger people, I mean, they all want to do it right here on this. We get hit at our concession stand and gift shop at the theater. You guys don't have Apple Pay? What is that? I just do my little phone like that and boom. I'm like, where's the money go?
In your account.
Yeah.
Where does it go? I want to see it.
I want to see
Show
some-
me the money.
Show me the hard cash, baby.
Great suggestion, Ralph. Any other comments from the board? Kendall, anything else we can do?
Good. I think we got some clear direction.
Based on that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the study session.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Thank you very, very much.